Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Life with Patty. So I'm coming to you today with a fun little video. I think I saw Dawn at Sensible Living with Money Mom. She did this video, and it was basically the difference between children that are growing up now as opposed to children that grew up in the 70s or the 80s. So I grew up as a young child. I went to junior high school in the 70s. So I remember a lot of the 70s growing up. I started high school in 1979. You know how the years split, 79, 80 was my freshman year. So the early 80s was when I was in high school. So those are both memorable times for me growing up. And so Dawn did this, this video on the difference between then and now. And some of her things that she talked about were really interesting and different than mine. I will try to remember to find that video of Dawn's and link it below for you so that you can go over and watch hers, because she grew up in Minneapolis, I think. And she was talking about the difference there and the neighborhood she grew up in as opposed to what I grew up in. So I just thought it was really fun. And so I thought, you know, I can do this. I'm going to do this one. So, like I said, I was in junior high school and grammar school during the 70s and high school in the 80s. Some of the differences, my husband and I were kind of talking about it and trying to think, you know, what were the differences? There was no social media back in the 70s and the 80s whatsoever. No social media at all. At school, we still wrote notes back and forth to each other. They don't do that now. You know, like we'd be in class, we'd write a note, pass it back. Nowadays, you'd probably just get caught with your phone texting back and forth to each other. Even kids in junior high school have cell phones now, iPads. Well, my grandkids got iPads when they were 3 and 4 years old. My grandson Jackson is 3. He has an iPad, and they know how to use them too. And you know, so that was one big difference. There was no social media back then. That's everything now. Even if kids don't belong to social media as Facebook or there's so many, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. What is the other one that? Twitter. I have an account with Twitter, and I never post on there, so I don't know. So Dawn was saying how they had just one phone line, one house phone, landline phone at her house. So I started thinking about that, and I thought, okay, so we had 3 in the 70s. We had 3 phone lines, because we had one in the, we had our kitchen and our living room were kind of connected, and there was a phone right there. And then my parents always had a phone in their bedroom. And then my sister, when she got to high school age, they allowed her to have a phone in her bedroom. And same thing happened with us when my sister and I are 10 years apart. So in the 80s, when I was in high school, then I got a phone in my bedroom. I don't think my brothers ever had phones in their bedrooms, but I don't think they cared, you know. But I remember one time my dad kept telling me, Patty, get off the phone. Patty, get off the phone. And I was like, okay, Dad, okay. And I was talking to a boy, and he's like, get off the phone right now. And I kept saying, okay. And so all of a sudden, and my dad was always kind of mellow with the girls. He was stricter on the boys, but he was always mellow with us. And he came in and he said, I told you to get off that phone right now. And, you know, being a sassy teenager, I was like, whatever, Dad, I will in a minute. And he came over and he wrapped the telephone cord around his hand and pulled it. And he pulled the whole sucker right out of the wall. And I was like, oh my God, what did you do? And I started to go to his bedroom, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I have to call Tommy back and tell him what happened. He's like, no, I pulled that off because you can't use the phone anymore. I thought that was the worst thing in the world. And now as a parent, I probably would have done the same thing. So anyways, we had 3 landline phones in our house, which I guess in the 70s was kind of a big thing. I don't know. Dawn said they only had 1, but we had 3. And then in high school, we had moved to a different house, but we still had 3 landlines in the house. But nowadays, people don't even have landline phones. You know, for the most part, we don't have a landline phone anymore. You all have cell phones. And if you've got 5 kids and the 2 of you, it seems like everybody's got their own phone. So my next door neighbors, they have 3 kids, and the 2 of them, they have 5 cell phones going all the time. And they have 5 iPads and I don't know how many laptops, you know? So it's different, definitely different that way. We lived in a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house growing up. In both the houses that I lived in, I remember we lived in 3 different houses. My parents, I guess we moved a lot, but every single house that we had 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. The first house that I was born in, that I lived till I was 8, we had 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. And then the second house, we had 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and the third house, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. So I guess we lived in a larger house. Right now, I live in a house that's 3 bedrooms, 1 bath. I would give anything for a second bathroom. That if I could have anything, I don't want a dishwasher, lots of different things. I would love another bathroom, because when we have company over, and like my son and his wife and kids come to stay, it's kind of tricky with the 5 of them and the 2 of us, 7 people, 1 bathroom. So that was how our house was growing up. We had plenty of bathrooms. One thing I think that is different, I've lived in this area most of my life where it's really hot in the summer, but as children, we played outside all the time. And I remember in our first house that I grew up until I was 8, I remember still playing outside in the front yard with all the neighbor kids. And the thing that told us when the street lights came on, we all came in the house. And then when we moved to our second house, about 4 hours away, 3.5 hours away, we still lived in a residential block. And same thing, when the lights came on, we came in the house. And we played outside all the time. And when I got to be about 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, at our second house, I had a pony. And my best friend lived about 4 streets down, which was really like a couple miles. And in the summertime, or the weekends, I would get on my pony first thing in the morning after I had breakfast, and I would ride to her house, and we would literally play all day long, or hang out, you know, as we got older, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And we would ride our ponies everywhere. We would go up to the local little grocery mart. It was a small grocery store. We could tie our horse outside. Now, this was out in a rural area in the 70s, but we could tie our horse up to this post right next to the store, go in and get an ice cream or get a candy bar and some chips and a Coke or something. We rode our horses everywhere. We put so many miles on those little ponies. We both had ponies. We put miles on those ponies like no other. And I didn't come home until the streetlights came on, or I got tired of hanging out with April. And so we would literally ride all day. We didn't have cell phones. My mom's rule was be home before dark, be home before the streetlights come on. So we could be gone all day long in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And that was our rule. If we weren't home by the time the streetlights came on, my mom was calling April's mom, and my dad was driving around to find us, but that never happened. And the other thing growing up as kids on the block is that all the kids played together, and we would go over and go swimming at the next door neighbors. So we didn't have a pool, and most of our neighbors had pools, so we'd go over and go swimming. But we literally played outside all the time. To come inside and play in the house, we probably only did that when it was winter time. You know, we didn't hardly ever play inside, but we loved to play outside. Nowadays, a lot of kids will play, and I think they come in and they play video games or stuff like that. But I know some of the boys, my coworkers, still play outside, so I don't know if that's changed a lot. But my husband said to make sure to say that we drank out of a garden hose and we're still alive. We didn't have bottled water back there. Back then. We didn't have water filters on our faucets in the house. We did have, at our second house, we weren't on city water. At our second house, we were on our well. Our first house, we were on city water. Our second and third house, we were on wells. And we did have these big tanks that you put salt in them, and it was supposed to clean the water some. And I remember those because we'd have these. It was a water filter system that used salt. So I guess you were drinking salty water, but I guess it cleaned the water somewhat. But we used the garden hose all the time, and we were just fine. The other thing was, Dawn was talking about how many TVs were in the house. So in our house, we had 2 TVs. One in the living room that we all watched as a family, and my parents had one in their bedroom, and I think they hardly ever turned it on. And we weren't allowed to go in there and watch TV in their bedroom. So we just had the one TV. There was no cable, there was no internet, there was no satellite TV. We had an antenna, and we got about 8 channels, and that's all you got. Even into the 80s, we didn't have that. And then I think it was after I got out of high school that they came out with the Beta or the VHS machine, which is like a DVD player. Oh my gosh, we didn't own one at the beginning. My parents wouldn't buy one to begin with, but you could rent one. You could rent the machine in the movies at the movie. It was like a Blockbuster Video, but it was a video store. We thought that was the coolest thing in the world, to be able to watch a Wizard of Oz at home on our own TV, since you used to have to go watch it at the movie theater. And I remember my kids asking me, "You couldn't watch DVDs at home?" And I'm like, "No." "Well, how did you watch a movie?" I'm like, "You went to the movie theater." "Well, what if you want to watch it again?" I go, "You went back before it went off." I remember going to see Grease at the movie theater, I think 5 times, because I loved that movie. And Ice Castles. And we didn't go to the movies a lot as kids. We did not go to the movies a lot. When I got into high school, I went a little bit more, because then I started dating or my high school friends, and we'd go to the movies, but not so much when I was younger. And my parents were not one of those that took us to the movies. No, my dad worked. My dad was a workaholic. He worked all the time. And on Sundays, he didn't work. We went to church, and then we came home. We had to stay home on Sundays. We weren't allowed to go play with our friends or go somewhere else. It was a family day. We stayed home with our families. And as my older siblings started having kids, that was the day they all came over, and we had Sunday dinner with my sister and her husband and their kids. And that's just what we did on Sundays. So let's see. For school, I went to private school for my grammar school years. I went to Catholic school until 8th grade, graduated from 8th grade. And then my parents wanted to send me off, because where we lived, there was no Catholic high school. So they wanted to send me back to the town I grew up in, that we were from, that I grew up till I was 8, because that's where my parents were both born and raised. And my aunts and uncles and my grandparents lived down there. So my parents wanted to send me back down there to live with my aunt and uncle and to go to the Catholic school down there. Oh my God, I had a fit. I told them what rotten parents they were. I was like, "You want to get rid of me? You want to put me in boarding school or ship me off to somebody else?" So anyways, they decided, okay, they wouldn't do that, but they did not want me to go to the high school that was in the town that we were living in, because they thought it was too big, and they'd heard too many problems about it. So they actually moved. That's why we moved to our third house, because it was in a different school district, and I could go to a different high school. So I went into my freshman year of high school not knowing anybody, because I had grown up most of my school years in the second house with all my friends there. I was so excited to go to high school there, and then my parents were like, "Nope." So they sold their house. We moved about 40 miles away to a different school district. I went to high school there, but I did meet wonderful friends there that have been my lifelong friends. So I'm glad that, I guess, they moved us there. let's see, they talk about how moms stayed home back then as opposed to moms at work now. My mom worked for my dad. My dad owned his own business, and my mom went in and did all the book work. But this is what they did. They would drop us off to school, and then my mom would go to the shop and do all the book work, and then my mom would pick us up from school and we'd go home. So we didn't know, even though we knew my mom worked for my dad, it was no different to us because she was always home when we were home. And then when summertime came, she would never leave us home by ourselves, so we would go with her to my dad's shop. We hated going. We thought it was so boring and it's so hot. Now I think about it, like my son has his own shop, and he has in his office, he has another room just for my grandkids, and they've got a couch in there and air conditioning and a TV and video games and books, and just like being at home. So I probably wouldn't have minded going to my dad's shop so much if they had that set up. But we had to go with my mom to the shop. When I got a little bit older, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, she would let me stay at a friend's, but I couldn't stay home by myself until my freshman year of high school. I didn't get to stay home till then by myself. If my sister was home and she was 10 years older than me, I could stay home with her. But she got married right at 18, so I was only 8, so she wasn't home very much. And the last thing I'll talk about is that how we ate meals. We ate almost all our meals at home. My mom made a regular breakfast every morning. We hardly ever ate cereal for breakfast. And maybe that's why I'm not a big cereal person now, where my husband will eat cereal for breakfast every morning. I will not. My mom always made eggs, bacon, or sausage, or linguiça, or something, and toast, and pancakes, or waffles, or French toast. But every morning we had a big breakfast. And my mom made that for all of us. And then for lunch, of course, we ate at school, but we went to Catholic school and they didn't have a cafeteria, so my mom packed our lunch every day. And then she packed my dad a lunch every day. And I think she packed her lunch, I guess, when she went to work with my dad. And he didn't stop for lunch and go like out to eat somewhere. Once in a while, as we got older, he did. And my brother started working the business with my dad, and then my first husband actually did too after I got way older. He started working the business, and then my dad felt like he could go more, so he would leave and go have lunch and then come back. And then dinner we ate at home every single night. My mom was not, all of us kids kind of joke that way because we love our mother with all our hearts. And she used to can really well, but she was not a really great cook. My grandmother, her mother, was an awesome cook. But my mom, she cooked meals to get by. She didn't do a lot for taste as much as that you gotta eat, you know? So, but we ate every single day at home. Now, when we got older, we would go to this restaurant that was down, I don't know, a few miles down the road called the Ranch House, and we would go there for dinner on Sundays. That was usually the only time we went out for dinner. And if we didn't go there, once in a while my mom would order Chinese and bring it home, or order pizza and bring it home. My mom never liked pizza, but my dad did, we did. But hardly ever did we go out for like Mexican food or this or that. Not until I actually got married. And then my mom started taking me to go eat out for lunch sometimes. So anyway, so I just thought that was kind of fun when I watched Dawn do her video, and mine's a little bit different than hers, but still kind of tried to stay with some of the same things that she talked about. So I feel like this was a fun thing, just growing up in your younger years as opposed to now. So if anybody would like to do this video and talk about when they grew up, some of you actually might have grown up in the 60s. And so if you want to do this video and talk about what it was like growing up in the 60s or the 70s where you lived, or the 80s where you lived, I would love to hear your stories. And I'm not going to tag anybody. I'm opening this up to anybody who wants to do it. If you're a little bit younger than us and you grew up in the 80s or the 90s, talk about that as opposed to now, 2020, as opposed to the 90s. You know, that's quite a ways away from each other. So, and just the differences that you see from when you were a kid to now. So I would love to hear from some of you that grew up in the 60s, and talk about your childhood. So, all right, you guys, you have a great day. Take care, and I'll see you right back here again tomorrow. Bye, guys.